Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Luther's question, what is this, or what does it mean? We are to fear and love God so that we do not despise preaching or God's word, but instead keep that word holy and gladly hear and learn it. So I don't know about you, but Luther's take on the Third Commandment I think is particularly helpful and interesting. Usually when we're considering the Third Commandment, it boils down to an argument or discussion of, oh, I don't know that we should do that, or that's probably not something that I should do on a Sunday. Or maybe more in terms of nostalgia. Well, remember the blue laws. Remember when there were so many things that couldn't be done or weren't done, and everything was closed on Sundays. And so then everyone would be in church. Well, friends, those days are gone, and we really need to live in the here and now. And Luther's question seems to be really pointed in the sense that people might have been here, but in keeping with this explanation of the Third Commandment, it's another level yet to consider. Were the people that were here, did they really want to be here? And notice Luther uses a strong word. He says that we do not despise preaching or God's word. That really points to the fact that Luther is talking about a matter of our devotion and our emotional connection and devotion with worship, prayer life, and the day of rest being a day that is not just set aside and kept separate, and not just a day that is something that is for us to stop working. And all those meanings are certainly true, but Luther is pointing to another understanding yet, where we really look at the Sabbath day and the holy day in terms of what does it mean to be a child of God who has been gifted with a holy day, who has been cherished and relished by God. And so what is our spiritual, emotional response to that? Is it a day in which we really are glad to be a part of, glad to hear God's word, and to learn about what God is trying to speak about us, not just for the day of rest, but for then the days ahead? So this is a way that we can really open our hearts to hear what God is speaking to us. Really frames this whole matter of Sundays and Sabbath days and days off and day of rest differently, doesn't it? It really points us to some questions within our hearts, our intentions. And just to be clear about this, this is not a personal matter. I mean, I've heard, subsequent commentaries and on Luther's reflection here that this isn't just about loving the preacher or what the preacher says. And so I don't take this in that sense. And I know that my messages aren't always great. Not everyone I preach is going to be even how I want it to be. And not every preacher is going to reach every person every Sunday. That's not what Luther is describing, but rather in the sense that we approach the day of rest, Sunday, times of worship, where we want to try to hear what is in it for us. We want to get to that message of the heart, and we want to try to avoid the distractions of trying to be entertained or trying to get things out of worship that aren't meant to be there. So then it becomes an interesting thing of trying to get the most out of a day of rest, which is interesting because usually when we're trying to get the most out of something, we're working it to death. And so Luther is putting a little interesting twist on that. We are trying to see what it means to our hearts to be participating in worship, right? Allowing our hearts to speak back to the God that gives us a break from the worries and the stresses and the strains of life. The day of rest is meant to be a peace that is part of who we are, so that we can recognize that peace and give back to the Creator who intended that time of peace and rest to be ours. It really is a matter of the heart.